Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the February meeting of the Board of Early Education and Care to order. I first want to thank our friends here at the community group in Lawrence for hosting us today. Children and families throughout Lawrence are served from this facility, and it's an honor to share space with you all today. And Maria, please extend our thanks to your entire team for making today happen. I also want to acknowledge the team at EEC that works really hard to ensure that these meetings come together. These meetings don't just happen. They make sure that we have the supports and technology needed so that we can go across the Commonwealth and give more voice and access to the field. And so while the work is done behind the scenes, I speak on behalf of the board that the work is seen by us, and we're grateful for your assistance in making sure that this happens. I want to welcome our board members here today in Lawrence and members on the phone. I also want to welcome Dr. Stephanie Carrington, who's with us today on the phone for her first meeting. Stephanie, welcome.
Hello.
And Stephanie, if you could you just do a quick introduction for us on a little bit about your background?
Sure. So happy to be here. I'm Stephanie Curitin. I am a faculty member at Boston University in the Wheelock College of Education and Human Development. And the two departments and programs that I reside in are Education, Leadership, and Policy Studies, and of course the Early Childhood Program. And I also run a research center at BU that's called the Center on the Ecology of Early Development. And I am we've lived in Massachusetts since 2015, and that whole time I've been at Boston University, and I've had the opportunity to make some connections in the early childhood field with different programs and across the city. So I'm happy to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you, so welcome. We're happy to have you here today. Today's meeting will continue our focus on workforce opportunities. Last month, you may recall, we had the opportunity to kind of zoom out and take a macro look at the trends affecting employment here in the Commonwealth. And today, we'll continue to zoom in a little bit to learn more about the exciting workforce initiatives happening to determine ways that EEC can support, connect, scale, and partner with the work that you all are doing in the field. We're joined by several leaders and subject matter experts from the field today who will share some of the work happening every day to ensure that we have a quality workforce and that we are thinking about how to recruit and retain the professionals critical to the delivery of early education and care. And so we look forward to inviting our guests and welcoming them and having a robust conversation. At this point, I will turn it over to the Commissioner for her opening remarks.
Great. Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much, Maria, and to the team here at the community group for hosting us. It's great to be in Lawrence, and I also want to recognize Maria Martinez, who is our Regional Director for the Northeast and in the House to represent our team up here. So thank you for being here and for the work your team does. I want to start with a couple updates of things that have been happening since we last met and things you'll be seeing over the next few weeks. Many of you are aware that there's a temporary homeless shelter at Devens, Fort Devens right now to house some of the uptick we've seen in homelessness and migrants coming to Massachusetts. And I want to recognize our Family Access and Engagement team who have worked with the local community and family engagement grantees to set up facilitated play spaces in Fort Devens. Many of those families don't have access to play spaces or books or toys, and so I want to thank the team for their leadership in setting that up and bringing a little bit of joy to the families who are struggling to find housing and housing assistance. Today, we are opening up registration for our next and last distribution of rapid antigen tests to the field. So please get your orders in. We will be providing emergency tests through June, and the health line will continue to be available, but this will be the last tranche of tests that we'll be making available to programs and providers. We will be hosting our child care financial assistance regulations are still out for public comment. And we are hosting a public forum on Thursday at 10 a.m. via Zoom. So we hope folks from across the state will tune in, share their feedback and comments. We see this public comment period and the opportunity to hear from those community members with experience as an opportunity to make the very good, strong regulations that we put out for public comment even better. So please take the time to submit your comments in writing, to join us for the forum, and let us know the areas we got right and the areas that you see that we can strengthen and improve. And that's really the purpose of the public comment period. So I'm really proud of the work we did on the child care financial assistance regulations. We got a lot of things right. And I know there's probably areas where we could do even better, so please share your voices in that process. We will be bringing that public comment back here to the board at our March meeting with the hopes that we'll be ready to vote to send those new regulations, revised likely, as a result of the public comment period, that we'll be voting to send them for promulgation. Also, as part of our child care financial assistance reform work and overdue, is a reprocurement of our child care resource and referral services across the Commonwealth, which is a way that many of our families access child care financial assistance and also support in finding early education and care programs that meet the needs of their children as well as their families. And that contract, which is right now through our child care resource and referral agencies, is overdue to be reprocured, and we are on schedule to have that RFR, request for responses, posted before the next board meeting. So we're looking forward to that process. It's a competitive process for the first time, I think, in 4 years. So encouraging those of you who work in the community to take a look at that RFR and apply. And we will provide you with an update at the next meeting on some of the changes and highlights that will be included in that request for response. Couple personnel updates. I think the board is aware, and many of our community members, the agency has been busy building capacity in areas of need for the agency, both to deliver on our core functions, as well as address many of the new priorities and initiatives that the agency has. So I want to introduce Ian Cutler, who's here. He's our new Director of Strategy and Project Management. He joins us most recently from the Governor's Strategic Innovation Group. He was part of the team that was deployed to the agency to help on a number of projects. Ian led a lot of the work around the background record check process, which is very much in a different place than it was before he joined us. So joining us now formally on the team, and we'll have a role making sure that the many projects and initiatives are able to move forward and be executed. Before he was in the governor's office, he was at Google, so we're very happy to have his project management skills. Joining Ian, building out our strategic project team is Julia Anderson-Busick. I don't think she's here today, but she was also deployed to the agency working primarily on our child care financial assistance, now joins us full-time as a senior project manager. She recently was at the Harvard Kennedy School and started her state service at the Department of Developmental Services, and we're thrilled to have her join us as well to make sure that we're able to execute on your many priorities for us. I also want to introduce, although not here, but I think on video somewhere, is Jose Mendez, who is joining us as our new Director of Child Care Business Operations and Facilities, representing a growth and capacity building in the agency and recognizing that the agency has responsibility to support the financial sustainability and an operational health of our programs across the Commonwealth. So he'll have a role in our C3 program, which we hope will be continuing, as well as our facilities grant program, the EOS program, shared services, and other areas where the agency can provide additional support to our programs around business operations. He most recently worked for the public schools in Somerville, and also brings a depth of experience in our out-of-school time and after-school programming, which is another area of capacity building for the agency. So we welcome Jose and look forward to introducing him to all of you. Our next meeting is going to be March 21st, so please note it's a week later than the originally scheduled date. So we'll be having that one week later, and it'll be in Boston at our Milk Street offices. So we look forward to seeing many of you there. Thank you.
On behalf of my colleagues on the board, I want to welcome the new team members. Congratulations. We've got a lot of work to do together, and look forward to adding your voice to that work. And I also want to thank, the commissioner mentioned this, but to those who have participated in the public comment period regarding the subsidy regulations, extend a thank you as well. That's an important moment, an important opportunity to have your voice heard, and so thank you to those who have participated. We're going to move on to the public comment period of the meeting. I'm going to first invite Emily Murray from Beginning Bridges CFCE up to offer some remarks. As Emily comes up, I do just want to acknowledge that the board has received public comment from Family Services of Central Massachusetts regarding their Project Flourish program. Some of you may recall testimony provided to us at our September meeting in Worcester regarding Project Flourish, but we have received that comment from them as well. And I'd like to invite Emily up.
Chair, I choose?
Any chair.
Thank you. Thank you for welcoming me to speak today. I am Emily Murray, and I am a CFCE coordinator from South Central Massachusetts. And I'm here today to humanize the data that I submit each month and every quarter to EEC. I have the great privilege of serving families, working families, their mothers, fathers, and grandparents that cobble their work schedules around caring for their young children. We work with one-income families who are struggling to survive as they care for their children until they can re-enter the workforce when their children start elementary school. These families cannot afford childcare. Many of them can't afford preschool, yet they are not seeking vouchers. Our families are stressed, they're exhausted, they're isolated, and they're concerned about their children's social, emotional development. Many of these children interact simply with adult family members. But they come to our CFCE program, and we are one of the only EEC programs that touches these families' lives. They tell us that our playgroups are the highlight of their week. They are grateful for the peer interactions that their children would not receive if they did not have these CFCE playgroups. And they are grateful for the social connections that they make with their community members each week. I've been honored to work for this grant fund code for 22 years. And I have got to tell you that family needs have changed drastically in that time. And I want to share just one story of a little boy, 2-year-old boy, whose mom attempted to start playgroup with him last fall in September. And after 4 consecutive weeks where her little guy melted down before he could even enter our playgroup, she went home completely deflated and struggling. I worked with her and we came up with a plan, and we sent this parent a sequence of photos of the little guy's journey from our parking lot into the building and throughout his journey into our play center. Mom shared these photos with her son over the course of the week. The next week, her mother took a day off of work to support her mother, supporting her son so that he could have a successful playgroup experience. And I'm frankly delighted that after 12 weeks, he is still very cautious, but he's in playgroup, and this mother has the opportunity to enjoy her child learning through play in a community setting. CFCE groups also unique opportunities for community connections. Since the Duxbury tragedy, we have had a lot of candid conversations about maternal mental health in our playgroups, and I'm frankly shocked with how many parents have shared their postpartum struggles and challenges. We need a lot more work and support for families in this area, and we aren't able to do that without funding. And I'm here, we learned last month that unfortunately, yet again, there is another year of level funding for the CFCEs, our 10th in a row. And we are asked to do more with less for a very long time. One of the parents who sits on our Early Childhood Advisory Council has led this charge, and she's actually created a parent support network on her own. I'm working with her to outreach to families and to support her organization to make sure that she has a plan and the resources and referrals necessary to support the families that outreach to them. The CFCE, I know we're a drop in the bucket of the EEC funding. But we do mighty work. We're small, but we're mighty, and we have a huge impact in our communities. So as you look forward to FY25, I'm actually begging you to at least prioritize increased funding for the CFCE's program. At best, I encourage you to work with DESE and the other strengthening partnership organizations to find a way to fund and to permanently fund this critical community work that we do. Thank you. I have put together a little handout for each one of you with some FY23 quarter two impact data and comments from our parents. I also have parents who know that we face another year of level funding, who are kind of passionate about sharing the benefits of their CFC experienced. So I'm working on creating a little video, so you can anticipate seeing that in the future.
Thank you, Emily. We'll get that distributed as well as to folks on the board. And just want to thank you for your leadership and advocacy. And while we all love data to inform decisions, I appreciate grounding us that we need to humanize this work every once in a while. So thank you for grounding us in that today as well. So thank you.
Thank you for letting me.
I'd like to next call up Natalia Hernandez from CFCE of North Shore.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to echo much of what my dear colleague said about CFC. I work for the CFC of the North Shore. We cover 9 communities on the North Shore. I'm not going to say all 9 because every time I have to think about, I always forget one of the communities. But we are mainly in Peabody, under the Peabody Public Schools. And we serve surrounding communities there. We see over 1,000 people monthly. And like my friend just said, the connections that CFC make with people, with families, is really, really, really unique. We see people coming from different backgrounds, different experiences, many times different countries. And at CFC, they are able to make connections and sometimes just find the little strength that they need to keep going. Our facilitators are amazing, and the parents as well. So the connections, it's just beautiful to watch what they have to say about CFC and how the children enjoy being there in our programs. We offer programs in all of the libraries of the communities that we serve. And we also have 3 different locations, one in Peabody, one in Danvers, and another one in Salem, where it's like a center. We see the families. These connections are amazing, but I agree that there's so much more that we could be doing. The 1,000 of people that we see monthly, it's not even half of the people that we should be seeing. When I look, I live in Peabody, where it's like our main community. So when I look the city of Peabody, when I look at the places I go and the families I have contact with, I know that there's so much more that we could be serving. And one of the things I always think is about diversity and inclusion. That's one area that with more funding, we could definitely be doing a lot more. The service that we are offering now, we are able to connect with those families, but there is so much more that we could be, some other levels that we could be connecting if we could expand in these directions of the diversity of cultural and really like offering more spaces for these families to bring what they have to offer as well. Not only us giving, but also sharing with them all the knowledge that they bring to these groups. So I'm going to echo what you said in the fact that, yes, funding is definitely necessary. We've been doing so much. Before North Shore, I was in Everett for close to 10 years, and I've always seen like CFC ladies, and I say ladies, but gentlemen too, doing so much with whatever is given to us, and always the creativity is amazing. Of course, we work with little children and families, so we're always very creative on how we are going to stretch that money and make it work. But when we look at the numbers, when we look at data like she presented, we see that we really have a lot to do, and we always wonder, are we doing all that we should be doing? So please consider, I know next year we are going to be, actually very soon we are going to be starting to write this competitive grant, And we really, really wish that we could have a little more to work with to better serve our families. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, for your advocacy, representing all 9 of your towns. I won't try to mention them either, so we covered them all, but thank you for being here
I can let
today.
you know what they are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the last one I have on my list is Laura Perill from Nurtury.
Good afternoon. It's delighted to be here today, and I want to thank welcome the Secretary and thank the Commissioner, Chair, and all the board members for giving this opportunity. I will be speaking on a panel a little bit later, but I wanted to speak today to a couple of broader points that impact the business before this board and before policymakers and legislators. My name is Laura Perill. I'm proud to be the leader of Nurtury Early Education, a large nonprofit early education agency that has been providing education for young children and child care support for families since 1878. We operate both center-based programs serving infants, toddlers, and preschoolers, and we support a robust family child care system that we'll have the opportunity to speak to a little bit later today. We serve multiple communities from Chelsea, Everett, Revere, and Winthrop to many neighborhoods in Boston, stretching from East Boston down to Hyde Park. Together, through these programs, we serve over 1,000 children and families, the vast majority of whom live in economically marginalized communities and with low incomes that make them eligible for subsidized childcare through the state subsidy system. But it is not easy for them to access that care, and that's one of the reasons that I'm testifying today. And I also want to really center, even as we focus on family child care, I want to center the work of our staff and educators in centers. We are still experiencing a child care staffing crisis. It is the result not just of the pandemic, but of the historic low pay and inequitable treatment of the early education system vis-a-vis, say, the K-12 system. And I think that's incredibly important that we continue the bold moves that both the legislature and the administration have been doing to try to address some of those funding challenges. And so I want to applaud that work with a plea that that continue into the coming budget and future budget years. And specifically, I want to say that we are very grateful for the C3 operating grants, which support all child care programs with basic financial support to address increased operating costs. We think it's a really novel approach and moving in the direction of foundational operating support for the true cost of care. But I also want to highlight that we hope that these will continue in FY24 alongside of increased investment in the subsidy rates and subsidy system that cover the cost of care for more than 50,000 children statewide. This cannot be an either or. It has to be a both and that continues EEC's mission of centering the most vulnerable children and families first and building outwards from there. Because the subsidy rates provide the backbone of funding that actually allow us to begin sustaining increased workforce wage investments. And so it's incredibly important that we not view them as interchangeable, but as both and, respecting that we must center the most vulnerable children and then build outward from there. And of course, we want more providers to join the subsidy system, so we want to make it easier for them to do that, to join the 50% of programs currently providing this care and increase access further to children and families. So on that note, I want to also, my second point is to speak in support of the proposed subsidy regulations. I want to thank the Commissioner for bringing these recommendations forward and for really taking a human-centered, a child and family-centered approach to this, what I'd like to say as the first wave of reforms in the subsidy system. I have seen them, I've looked at them, they're a great start. They need to go farther to aggressively knock down barriers, unnecessary regulatory barriers, unnecessary procedural barriers. I want to remind us that if you have a 9-year-old that you're trying to put into a public school system, you basically need a birth certificate and a utility bill. If you're trying to access early education and care for your 3-year-old, your 4-year-old, or your infant, you need about 14 inches of pay stubs, documentation, birth certificates, proof of the second parent, whether that second parent is in that child's life or is possibly your abuser. There are all kinds of regulations that create hurdles for families with children under 5 that do not exist in the publicly funded education system for children over the age of 5. It's not right. It's also not smart. We need to continue to knock down those barriers. So I want to applaud those efforts. I want to speak in support of the continued advocacy of Greater Boston Legal Services and their recommendations to push those reforms further. And I hope that it is just the first wave of effort in making childcare and early education truly accessible to more and more families while supporting the educators and staff who deliver that care. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura, and we look forward to inviting you back up in a little bit. Thank you for your advocacy. Before we get to our regular agenda, I do want to welcome the secretary and give him a chance to offer some opening remarks.
Good afternoon, all. Forgive me for being late, but it's Board of Higher Ed this morning, and off to Lawrence for early ed and care, which I'm excited to be part of. I just want to, this is actually my first time meeting everyone in person, so hello. I'm Patrick White. Nice to meet you all.
3 members on the phone, Secretary.
and members on the phone. And I want to thank everyone for their generosity and their patience, but also their candor in my transition. Yesterday marked the beginning of my 5th week in the role, and I have to say that I've learned a lot, but I still have quite a bit to learn. I had an opportunity, along with Commissioner Kershaw, to participate in the annual Rennie Center event a couple of weeks ago. And I shared, at that event, I shared a framework for thinking about the path ahead in early education, but also K-12 and higher ed. This framework involves the intentional use of organizing principles that reflect our understanding of need and opportunity. The organizing principles stabilize, heal, and transform, lift up the idea that we are still in recovery and experiencing challenges that are many in number and deep in nature. Nonetheless, we have a unique opportunity to fundamentally transform opportunities and experiences at all levels. As you might imagine, we're in the throes of working to develop a budget for fiscal '24. This is a process that involves a lot of listening and understanding first and foremost, and then thinking strategically, leveraging the stabilize, heal, and transform organizing principles. Not quite time yet to talk about them, but I do look forward to sharing and discussing more substantively the organizing principles and the subsequent budget in the weeks to come.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And I was also at that Rennie Center event, and your framework is spot on. And I think one of the most important things you ended with at that presentation is that we need to do this work together. And so I appreciate everyone who provided public comment, Region 3, is that where we are? I mean, turned out today. We've got a packed room here.
Northeast for now.
The Northeast. And so, but we do need to do this work together and look forward to that partnership. We're going to move now to our routine business. We have before us the minutes of the January 10th, 2023 board meeting. Are there any edits or corrections or additions to those minutes? Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the January 10th, 2023 board meeting. Can I have a second?
Second.
Carolyn, thank you for the second. And I will call the roll. George Atanasoff.
Yes.
Carolyn Kane.
Yes.
Secretary Tutwiler.
Yes.
Maria Moeller.
Yes.
Jamela Lee.
Yes.
Cheryl Travers.
Yes.
Nikki Ruiz. She may not be on yet. Okay. Morris Eagle.
Yes.
Linda Sager.
Yes.
And Stephanie, I know you were not with us, so when I call your name, if you could just abstain, that would be great. Stephanie Curenton.
Same.
Thank you. The minutes of the January 10th, 2023 board meeting are approved. I will now turn it over to the commissioner for the heart of our agenda today.
Great, and let me welcome up Jocelyn and Ellen Grandin, who I think we've introduced to you before, our new Senior Associate Commissioner for Workforce Development. So I'm really excited about the presentations and the partners that we're going to,
Hey.
and Sarah Volkana, oh, sorry. Wendy. Oh, and Wendy. Wendy, great. We'll have them introduce themselves and their roles in a moment, but I'm really excited about the presentations that we are going to be hearing over the next several minutes. As you know, we at the agency have been working kind of on two parallel tracks around workforce. We had a lot of sort of operational stuff to focus on in the first year of the time I was at the agency, while we've been sort of working on our theory of action around workforce. So we are working on two parallel and equally important tracks, and Jocelyn will pick up on this in a minute, as we've shared with you. The long-term need to professionalize the early education and care field, recognize the field with the credentials, and we hope the compensation that the field deserves, so that it's a meaningful, clear, supported pathway and career choice for early educators. And part of that is partnering with our higher education community in a different way and making our higher education much more accessible. It's not the only path in we want for our early educators, but it is a very important path of economic mobility for our staff working in early education and care programs. So we're going to start today with an update on sort of where we are on that horizon of really developing that meaningful career pathway, our partnerships, and sharing a brand new collaboration that we've developed with the Mass Association of Community Colleges that I'm excited for you to hear about. And then in the meantime, we're going to turn to some of what's happening now to help with the urgent crisis and capacity in the early education and care field. So our board working group has been really focused on letting the sort of chips fall into place around the long-term planning while we focus on the urgent need of the day around capacity, recruitment, and retention, building a pipeline. And so you're going to hear from our staff today, but much more importantly, as I've said over the several months, there are amazing things happening out in the field, and you are going to hear only a sampling of them today. As the chair mentioned, we heard from Project Flourish, our September board meeting, another example of really amazing innovations that are happening across the state. And the question that we've had collectively as an agency and as a board is, what is the right role for us to play? We don't want to disrupt or interrupt any of the innovations that are happening in the field, but we know there's urgent work that's needed. And so what is the best place for us to be inserting ourselves to scale, to amplify, to leverage, and to really try and meet the moment for the early education and care field. So I'm excited to turn it over to Jocelyn to share the long term, and then we'll invite some of our panelists to talk a little bit about the innovations that are happening now, both in our family child care side, as well as in our center-based staff to build pipelines and recruit and retain staff. So Jocelyn.
Thank you. Who is managing this? I'm about to manage the slides.
Which is why it has not effectively moved. There you go.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner, Secretary, Chair, and members of the board. It's a pleasure to be here to join in this discussion. I'm going to jump ahead. And to begin, I just wanted to provide an overview of all the different topics that we will touch on today and provide, through this presentation, dig in a little bit more deeply on sort of what we've been doing, where we stand with each of these, and where we're going, and what our plan is for next steps. On the the left-hand side of this, you can see a figure that maps out the leverage points for building robust professional pathways and career pathways for educators. We'll dig into each of these areas, but just to provide an overview, particularly for new board members, this starts with designing clear and compelling career pathways for educators. Currently, those pathways are defined by requirements for certification that are written into regulations. These are the requirements that educators are expected to meet before they can be hired for different roles. So that's teacher, lead teacher, and director positions. We're currently in the planning phase of a new credentialing system. The goal of the credentialing system is to map out more robustly career pathways for educators from novice to expert and including directors. So that is work in progress. Access to higher education and preparation programs are obviously essential for educators as they build their professional skills and move along a career pathway. We will talk about some work that we've been doing with the community colleges to build that access, and Ellen will speak to that more fully in a few minutes. And then additionally, Healthy Workforce has a strong workforce pipeline, bringing educators into the system and also retaining educators who are staying in the system and building and growing their skills. So both building that pipeline and creating stable employers with competitive compensation are really a critical component of that pipeline. And what we're hearing from the field right now is that the pipeline is broken, that it is very difficult to retain educators, it's difficult to bring new educators into the field. So on the right-hand side, you can see some of the more urgent and immediate work that we're doing and thinking about the innovations to address these capacity challenges. We'll speak about an early childhood educator pilot, working on providing childcare financial assistance for staff working in early education and care as a way to expand the benefits for staff in the field. And we'll also talk about the work that we're doing in building supported and clear pathways into the field, starting with a public information campaign to broaden awareness of early education as a field, direct people into a job board, which will provide access to opportunities in the field, and then look at the ways in which we support educators coming into the family child care field, opening, building, and sustaining successfully a business, and looking at the ways in which center-based staff are supported in entering the field, being successful, learning on the job, and growing their skills. As a starting place, I want to give a little bit of background on where we have been with the certification requirements. Up until December of 2021, again, as I said, certification requirements were written into regulations. There are certain things that had to be done before one could be hired into a job. And then once you were hired in, you were good. You had your job, you had your certification, you were all set unless you wanted to move up to another level. What we heard beginning during the pandemic, and we'll speak to this, but this continues obviously, is that there were real challenges hiring educators. So starting in the fall of 2021, EEC worked with the board to develop some alternative pathways into the field and created the minimum hiring requirements. These were agreed and voted on and put into place in December of 2021. There are a couple of key changes that were made through those minimum hiring requirements. First of all, on the qualification side, we broadened the ways that programs could determine the requirements that they needed for new hires. So it gave us an opportunity to put in some pieces that were not in the regulations, including accepting DESE licenses, accepting unofficial transcripts, recognizing that at that point in time there was difficulty sometimes getting paperwork from higher education institutions, and increasing the range of content and coursework that educators could take to qualify for their position. We also created less restrictive ways for educators to finish their coursework. So instead of having to complete all courses prior to hire, there were some courses that are required prior to hire, but an educator could put in place a plan to complete the coursework necessary within a few months after hire. And this provided a great deal more flexibility, and I think I'll speak to this a little later, but also created more of an expectation of ongoing professional learning on the job as well. We increased the common courses that qualified for rapid hire, and we also increased the way work experience from a variety of related areas could count for unsupervised work experience. So it wasn't just working in a licensed early ed program that could count for some of the work experience. There are a broad range of related experiences that could then be considered when looking at hiring. On the operational side, we shifted the onus and the agency to the programs. So instead of program directors having to wait on EEC to give certification to an educator and then hire that person, we ended the process of EEC providing certification to educators and created a system where program leaders are the ones validating the qualifications. And then keeping the documentation on file so licensors can check, but the process is now in the hands of directors. And over the course of the past year, we've been listening carefully to the field and the feedback that we've been getting about how this is going. We had a conversation about this with the board in June to revisit the status of the minimum hiring requirements. And we heard a few strong themes coming from the field. First of all, the minimum hiring requirements really have provided the field flexibility in hiring and more control over their capacity to hire as likely candidates come forward. And the decision was made in June, and I think if you look at the evidence coming from C3 that we looked at more recently, we should really continue with this to continue the minimum hiring requirements and sustain that flexibility for the field. Having flexibility in hiring educators with a range of degrees was also something that the field noted that they appreciated. And I've touched on this point before, but one thing that has been interesting is that expectation of ongoing training is also something that moves us from, sort of you have to complete these requirements before you start working, to an expectation of ongoing professional learning as part of working as a professional in the field. At the same time, we did also hear from the field that more technical assistance was needed in managing the minimum hiring requirements. There are many different options. With flexibility comes complexity, and sometimes it was difficult to know what the right decision was to make. So we've made the teacher qualification unit available for consultation. They're also going to have office hours, so they really are available on demand to help anybody who's struggling with a decision and trying to figure out what to do with a particular candidate. Professional Pathways continues to help connect educators with required coursework. So this is a website run by Neighborhood Villages where you can contact a consultant who will support you in finding coursework at a community college. And it just helps to navigate. There are many different course schedules. Some have availability, some don't. It's a way to centralize that search process. And as part of that process, we are also directing funding and working with the community colleges to expand access to courses of the highest demand, particularly child development and the administration course, which are sort of the key benchmarks for entry into different roles. Finally, we're working on putting additional professional learning opportunities and making information and registration options available on our Strong Start learning management system, which right now carries asynchronous courses, but will expand what is available through that system. And this also provides us the opportunity to identify CEU-bearing courses that could also be used for certification, so expand the information that's available about the ways in which one can meet some of those course requirements. Another strong message from the field is that they felt without EEC granting certification, the professional recognition that came with that process was lost. And many people have worked very hard for their qualifications and felt frustrated that they weren't able to get that professional recognition. There is also a loss of efficiency if educators aren't carrying that recognition with them, and each time they move to a new job, director has to revisit their qualifications. So we're looking into the opportunity to stage optional certification for educators. So this is above and beyond the minimum hiring requirements. It would continue with the minimum hiring requirements. We would not be going back to a system where you needed to achieve certification to be hired. But it would provide an option to those that have achieved the qualifications required by regulations to have that recognized and to have the certification granted. I'll talk a little bit more about timelines on that, but we want to make sure it's done in a way that's efficient, that's accessible, and doesn't put people in a place where they're feeling frustrated by having submitted an application and have a very, very long turnaround time. So right now we're looking at starting with director certification and making that option available to those who are currently qualified but have not yet received certification as a director, and it will continue. It's not one opportunity, for those who continue to gain those qualifications, they could come in and request that certification over time.
Jalsa, if you don't mind, I wasn't here when this happened, and so many of the board members were not here, so I'll ask the other board members. So I'm going to catch us all up on this, which is, so we're in the middle of the pandemic. It's very difficult to hire staff. There's a big backlog in our teacher qualifications. It is an old, very antiquated system. It is not good for our staff. It was holding up our ability to get folks into programs, and I think the agency took a necessary step to basically suspend that process. At the same time, changing the front door to be able to get more folks in to the field. Keeping an eye on quality and health and safety, making sure at least a level of minimum requirements around background record checks. There's additional information here, background record checks and some of the essentials that you have to have before you can even step in the classroom, but not requiring that minimum certification. And we have heard a lot as we've been out of programs. The chair and I were visiting a program. People are wringing their hands out there that we're not issuing certifications right now because they want to be recognized professionally for what they're bringing to the classroom, what their skills and training are, and we want that too. We are just not in a position at the moment to be able to turn that system back on. We want to turn on a new and better system, but recognizing that this is a real need, that, you know, just like in K-12, where we're issuing teacher licenses, we need to be recognizing the value and professionalism of our staff. And so turning it on in an optional way, to give people the option to be able to do that, is sort of what we feel like we can manage now, while putting our best energies into building the new credential and building a better certification system that can support kind of the needs of the field going forward. So it was a pretty significant action by the board to reduce to these minimum hiring requirements. And as Jocelyn said, I think they've been really essential for us in this moment of workforce crisis. And so we are strongly recommending that they stay in place while we build the new things that will replace them. And some of what you're going to hear from our panelists when they come up here are some of the things that they're doing during that onboarding period to help support staff, to develop the skills, and to fall in love with the field, so they stay with us over time. So, sorry, I'm catching up on based on sort of my understanding from the team, and for the rest of the board members who maybe weren't here to benefit from that. I think it was a pretty significant deliberation at the board.
Yeah. Any questions on that before I move on? It was a lot over the last year and a half.
And we have heard from both our staff and from the field, because the agency did such a good job creating multiple options, that it can be hard to navigate. So we've just revamped our website on the minimum hiring requirements. Is that the next?
That's it.
Okay. So that the field has an opportunity to be able to see what is in place right now, which will likely stay in place for a little bit of time while we work on the next stage. So we've kind of revamped and added a new checklist onto the website, so that staff in the field can at least navigate, like, what is it that's in place right now that I need to follow while we build till the future state.
You mentioned that you're going to talk a little bit later, a little more about the early educator pilot for Chapter Financial. Okay.
Yeah, that's coming.
Jocelyn, if I could just say thank you. I know, I think in the middle of the pandemic, lots of decisions were made just in the spirit of how long is this going to last? What can we do today to help address really important issues? And we have heard loud and clear people's thoughts and perspectives on this particular topic, and I just appreciate the department's commitment to improving it going forward, right? And to listening to the field on what's needed, and making sure that whatever we kind of turn back on meets the needs of everybody out there going forward. So I appreciate the attention and the update on it.
Thank you. So this slide provides a little bit of an overview of how all these pieces are flowing together in tandem, and some rough timelines looking ahead. So in the immediate term, we continue to maintain the minimum hiring requirements for flexibility and stability. We are also in the process of hiring a vendor to support the continued development of the credential, and really start digging into the final phases of development around, finalizing exactly what those pathways and credentials will be, and then what are the verification requirements and the process to get verified. We'll start by prioritizing the first two levels of the educator credential and director credential, so that we can start rolling out opportunities as soon as possible. And then looking ahead 6 months in the short term, we are looking into the strategy of a stage relaunch of certification. So really thinking about our own internal capacity, the ways in which our current IT systems and potential future IT systems might support a more efficient process. Again, as a beginning place, we're assessing the feasibility and the timelines on which we could open optional. And again, this continues in tandem, or simultaneously, not in tandem, with the minimum hiring requirements. So you can be hired into a job without certification. I think it's just important that everybody's clear on that. That process hasn't changed. But this is for those, an option for those that have achieved the certification requirements. We're looking into reopening the process whereby EEC would grant that certification. Again, looking at directors only as a starting place. But looking ahead, we are thinking about designing and incrementally deploying new supportive IT systems. If we could improve the business process around the verification of certification, we right now are using a very old and slow and cumbersome system. That would immensely improve the speed at which we could provide certification, and the volume that could be handled by that particular team. Ultimately, as well, we're looking at deploying systems that both support the immediate and the long term, so that they would ultimately transition into a support for credentialing. We will also have to attend to data migration out of the older system. into a new system, and that I hear is not a small challenge. In the long term, we're looking ahead to the development and launch of a credential. So once the design phase that, we're trying to wrap up this fiscal year with the vendor, we will actually simultaneously, I think these pieces won't be sequential, but we'll begin to socialize our thoughts, socialize the revised pathway and the credential, engaging with stakeholders, with folks from programs, with folks from higher ed. We're really looking for broad field-based input on the design and plan for launching of the credential. We will also have to revise regulations to formally launch the credential. The certification expectations will have to be replaced with the expectations necessary to launch a credential. And we'll look at the ways in which we can support the field in understanding what's expected of them for the new credential in advance of launching and identifying opportunities so that everybody in the field will have an understanding of what's coming and opportunities to prepare themselves for that piece. And then looking at the stage launch, again, prioritizing those early levels and continuing to build an educator registry.
I think one of the things we've heard loud and clear too is that we have to make sure we're taking care of the folks who've joined the field. So as we roll out the new credential, as Jocelyn's saying, we want to work with those in the field to make sure there's pathways and places and ways to move towards that new credential. So that's a commitment the agency has.
And recognizing and valuing the certification that people come with. I don't want to imply that we're going to ask everybody to start from scratch. I think it's really important that there will be continuity. Any questions on that? No? Okay, I'm going to turn it to Ellen to dig a little bit more deeply into the credential development and some of the career pathways work with community colleges.
Thanks, Jocelyn. So as Jocelyn mentioned, we're working on the credential development and career pathway, and we have a lot of partnerships in this. And as mentioned prior, we are at the end of the cycle of securing a vendor to help us with those next steps around how we verify the decisions, the communication plan to the community, both internally and externally, any regulation changes. One of the things we want to make sure is that our educators feel supported and secure in what they're doing and how that's contributing to the future and their plans. So we're going to continue to offer professional development opportunities. And one of the initiatives that we've had in place for a while is the Career Pathways Grant. The funding that goes to the 15 community colleges and Urban College of Boston provides access to higher education. And there's a starting point for almost everyone, which is really important. And the nice thing about the community colleges is that because they're regional, they're accessible. The coursework is provided, depending on the region, in English, Spanish, Portuguese, and Mandarin. And in addition, as Jocelyn mentioned earlier, navigating higher ed can be complicated for anyone. And for our educators trying to find a starting point, we've had a partnership with Professional Pathways Neighborhood Villages. And our goal there is to make sure that every educator has someone to speak to and point them in the right direction as far as, where do I start? What kinds of courses do I need to take? And also recognizing that some of our educators may not start directly in college coursework, but may start in a training or another professional development opportunity. Some of the work that we've seen so far is we've had over 700 educator inquiries to neighborhood villages, and about 71% of those inquiries are really around college coursework at the community colleges, with about half of those going to child growth and development. And what's important as far as that course goes is that it's one of the first courses that most educators take in order to be teacher qualified. And again, we want to look at that credential and how it fits in to make sure that our educators have a robust set of courses that gives them a well-rounded starting point for their work in the field. We've also, there's been over 7,000 educators that have benefited from the Early Childhood Pathways Grant since 2019. And there's been approximately 300 associate's degrees completed since that time.
Sorry, Ellen, can I?
Sure.
I think part of what we want to be communicating with our work around access to higher ed is that we want to be connecting the future credential to an easy pathway through our higher education system. These are two programs that exist right now, and we are reaching a lot of educators through these programs, and there is a great opportunity for strengthening and improving the work. And so one of the things we've learned through our partnership with Neighborhood Villages and outreach is that we have work to do around making the community colleges more accessible, reaching the early educators sort of where they are, working with the programs. They have to be able to be working and getting paid while they're advancing in their degrees. And I don't know, Mr. Secretary, if the Board of Higher Ed talked about the scholarship program, but this is a program that was built in 2000.
From 2017. For the
No,
CE
no,
scholarship,
yeah, the
or-
scholarship program was 2009, 8? And it was really designed at the time when the agency was pushing BAs, and it was designed around people who were already in the field, and you could take 3 classes, and we have an opportunity to update and modernize to reflect what we're trying to do now. So if we understand what the current challenges are, that folks are working in the field, that we're building a pipeline, that our higher education work needs to move along with the times. And so that's one of the reasons we're so thrilled to have Ellen here working with us, and why we've pursued this partnership with the community colleges. I was away from EEC for 13 or 14 years, and I came back and I was like, how did all those articulation agreements and credit for prior learning experience go while I was away? Oh, well, we're still working on them. I'm like, what? So this was a real opportunity, and the agency kind of partnered with our early childhood funders community to figure out how we work together to try and kind of finally turn that curve around credit for prior learning, and also making sure that there's more of a sort of a statewide system. So I think really important that the board's aware of these higher education opportunities that we're already funding, but that the work ahead is to connect them and line them up with the credential, and also make sure that the community colleges are really part of an accessible system of building this pipeline of educators and helping, move them. I think, as we've talked about here, in addition to wanting to fill classrooms and, have meaningful career opportunities, our staff are low-wage workers. And so we as an agency also have sort of an economic mobility agenda for the staff working in our early education and care programs. So credentialing, compensation, access to higher education is part of that kind of goal that the agency has as well. Sorry, just to step in there on that.
No, that's great, thank you.
I just want to make sure we get to our panels.
Yes.
So,
I'll move it right along.
Okay, great.
So as far as the 15 community colleges, we also just want to make sure that our educators know that there are also lots of resources for them at the colleges and right within their regions. The other thing I just want to mention quickly is the partnership with the Department of Higher Ed, which is the ECE scholarship. And that scholarship has been available for educators who are interested in applying for funding towards their associate's, bachelor's, and master's degrees. And the funding cycle opens in April for those that are interested. And we continue to try to help educators see their time in the classroom, but also beyond, as a continuous professional development and opportunity. And that scholarship has been awarded to more than 3,100 educators since 2017. And then our next partnership that Wendy Pearson is here with us today from the Massachusetts Association of Community Colleges is an additional partnership that we'll be working on with Wendy this year to look at the Commonwealth and a statewide opportunity to have the community colleges, EEC, and MAC to work together to, again, as the commissioner stated, is to make sure that everyone understands how to navigate and that there's a starting point for everyone. So on to you, Wendy.
Yeah, and I want to welcome you, Wendy, too. And, as I said, we worked with the Mass Association of Community Colleges to pitch this idea to the early childhood funders. So I want to thank them for their support of this work because I think we felt like, adding things onto people's day jobs over at the community colleges might not yield a different result. But we know the community colleges have come around on a lot of healthcare, on our certified nursing associates to figure out credit for prior learning experiences and push education out into the community. So we thought if we could get a little resource and some extra arms and legs into the community colleges, maybe we could push this work along. I had a chance, I think it was last week, to meet with all 15 community college presidents with Ellen, and we asked them to partner with us on this, to go back and make sure that it was a priority, and I said, don't leave yourself out.
So my name is Wendy Pearson, and I was hired, or thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Jocelyn. I have not actually met you in person yet, and Ellen, Associate Commissioner Grundine. I started in this position as EEC Workforce Liaison in mid-December, approximately, well, almost exactly 8 weeks ago. And I, too, am learning a lot. I was hired by the Massachusetts Association of Community Colleges, or MAC, to collaborate with the Department of Early Education and Care, with the Department of Higher Education, and the Early Childhood Education Deans, Education Chairs, leaders, and faculty of the 15 community colleges in Massachusetts. I've worked in the field of education since I started college in Boston many years ago, first as a volunteer, then as an assistant teacher, lead teacher, teacher supervisor, grant and training consultant. I was certified by several EEC precursors, Office for Children, Office of Child Care Services, and probably a few more in there. Certified as infant, toddler, pre-K lead teacher, and I served as a director. I've worked in and arranged educator training for early intervention, early childhood education, pre-K to 12 education, out-of-school time education, public and private special education schools, and in higher education, teacher preparation programs at the community college, the baccalaureate, and the graduate level. I collaborated with the successful EEC Educator and Provider Support Grant Program for 6 or 7 years when it was first initiated in 2010. And that was a wonderful grant program that enabled, I was at Salem State University at the time, it enabled students to come in, students with and without credentials, to come in and get their associates, well, they didn't get their associates with Salem State, they got their associate's degrees at the community colleges and work towards their bachelor's degrees and even their master's program in the graduate school at Salem State. And it was a wonderful program, and I don't have the numbers on how many folks graduated from each of the programs, but there were a lot of them. And it was a well-received program. A little bit about the Mass Association of Community Colleges, or MAC. Their mission is to advocate, communicate, and collaborate in order to strengthen community colleges for the benefit of students, communities, and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. They currently represent more than 136,000 students. They educate nearly half of all students in the state's public higher education system, the community colleges I'm referring to, not MAC. And they serve the largest share of first-generation students, low-income students, and students of color in the state. So they are an essential resource for supplying the high demand of qualified early childhood educators throughout the state. Together, the 15 community colleges have expansive capacity and have demonstrated expertise in the design and delivery of early childhood programs for all learners. However, there is currently not a fully developed system in place for colleges to coordinate their education programs consistently. And that is the goal here. That is EEC's goal, that is MAC's goal, that is everyone in the field's goal, I believe, to expand and improve access to training and pathway opportunities. The specific focus of the work of my position as EEC liaison is to build statewide career pathways, to explore opportunities to streamline early childhood educator credentialing, to build a system-wide process for awarding credit for work in the field via the Credit for Prior Learning platform. My charge is limited to those particular items, although there are several other things that will come during and after the work that we're doing with the community colleges. most community colleges returned from their the holiday season and the winter break last month, so it's been a little slow getting to meet with them, but it's taking place very quickly now. I have had the opportunity to meet with and get input from EEC Commissioner Kershaw, Associate Commissioner for Workforce Development, Dr. Grandine, to the EEC Director of Workforce and Policy, Sarah Volkanant, who's here today, and the Workforce Specialist, Sarah Cian, who is not here today. I will meet and collaborate with more early childhood education career pathways grant teams from the colleges this week when EEC hosts their Community of Practice group on Thursday. And I believe Sarah Cian is busily preparing that agenda and getting that out to the field. I have attended and I am amazed at the Strategies for Children, the daily 9:30 a.m. call-in. What a wonderful thing to keep the field informed of what is happening. And I was just amazed at how that's going. There are hundreds of educators keeping the lines of communication, collaboration, and updates about new initiatives open during the past 3 years. It's amazing. I've attended it, and there were hundreds of people on the Zoom. I have met with Amy O'Leary, the Executive Director of Strategies for Children, and she's very helpful and has offered to introduce me to all kinds of people.
We have an amazing network of folks, and I think one of the amazing things that's happening in the early education and care fields right now is the amount of alignment we have, both in terms of where the field needs to go, how we want to support our educators, and how we want to work with our community colleges. So I want to thank you so much for joining us. Right now, I think Wendy's contract ends at the end of June. I'm not sure we're going to get all those.
No, I think it ends the end of December.
Okay, good. I was like, I think we're probably going to need a few more years anyway, but that is a lot of work for a short timeline and things we've been waiting for a long time. So we're excited to be able to move in partnership with the community colleges and to really have the community colleges be a meaningful part of the fabric of our new credentialing system. So thank you all so much.
Can I just open up to the board real quick? Any questions on anyone on the phone or here?
I'll just add something for perspective. I'll just share a quick story. I'm excited to hear about, again, more participation from the community colleges, but I would like to bring in community providers into the conversation. In a community like ours, this is extremely important, and actually, as a matter of fact, we are in a room right now that was developed out of a grant we secured in order to build 2 classrooms so that community members felt more comfortable learning in a space that wasn't as intimidating initially. And so they come in, we accommodate, and I believe Neighborhood Villages actually, practices this type of strategy as well. Community members are more comfortable with community providers because they're more familiar with us. We speak their language and we understand the logistics, in terms of transportation issues they may have, or just among others, anyways. But I just wanted to share that community providers play an important role in participation of the community in these programs because they feel more familiar with us. And then obviously this is a starting point until they feel confident enough and are ready to join the community college classrooms.
I couldn't agree more, and I think part of the reason for the position and the conversation with the community college presidents is to make sure that we have a true accessible pathway that works with our community partners and doesn't have a sort of separate pathway. So,
Any other comments or questions from the board? Anyone on the phone? My only question, I'm just curious for future, maybe next meeting, curious just a little more information on the scholarship program, kind of utilization rate, how do people know about it? Just what is the kind of plan as it relates to accessing that tool to advance folks' degrees? So just educate a little bit us on what that program looks like would be helpful.
That'd be great.
So,
great idea.
Excellent.
Good question.
I think we're going to take a very brief 3-minute break and then invite our next panel up for conversation. Back to order, and I will hand it over to the commissioner to welcome our next panel.
Great. Thank you so much. We are going to turn now to the urgent initiatives of the day. So I'm going to have the EEC team talk a little bit about some of the projects that we are working on and prioritizing, and then we're going to invite 2 panels of our community partners, again, a sampling of some of the innovations that are out there, up to share what they're working on and their thoughts about how EEC could be most helpful. So a little bit on what's happening in our early childhood pilot. So that's making childcare financial assistance available as a recruitment and retention tool for our early education and care staff. And then hearing a little bit about the work the agency is doing on pathways, and we'll intersperse our panels as part of that conversation. And then we'll end with, if we have time, a little bit of a discussion on your thoughts about where we should be putting our efforts, most importantly. So turning it over. I'm happy to introduce our Deputy Commissioner for Family Access and Engagement, Tyrese Nicholas, who you've heard about in email, I think, but I'm not sure you've had a chance to meet in person, who has been overseeing the pilot work with a mighty team behind her doing it.
Small, but small.
Small but mighty, very small.
But
very
mighty
small.
team. Afternoon, Secretary, Chair, and other board members. I'm Tyrese Nicholas. I too am new. Secretary, I have been with the EEC for about 3 months. So I am also listening and learning and presenting today about, I probably will say, like, the most exciting thing for me. So upon my hiring, Commissioner Kershaw said, what's one thing you would like to do? I don't know if she remembers this. And I said, we really should honor the workforce. And many of our, many families in our workforce have been in the workforce historically underpaid. And caring for other people's children, our children included, and while other people, mainly their family members, are caring for their children as they cannot afford childcare. And so what would I like to do? I'd like to do this. And so that's the early education pilot for staff, and I'm excited to be able to share about it. So on January 11th, EEC launched the early childhood education pilot for staff working in early education programs, and that includes licensed and funded early education programs, as well as out-of-school programs. So that's our after-school programs too, which is our WISE, our Boys and Girls Clubs. I'm a Boys and Girls Club mom, and so I'm excited that it's access for everyone working in an early education program. So what I would say is, in the FY23 final budget, there was the $10 million allotted to do something for the early education staff. EEC launched the pilot. It opened the access to these families within our existing subsidy system. So we like to call that income eligible at EEC. And the biggest difference, I would say, in the access is that the access point for the income threshold was up to 85%, which is different from our other families accessing income eligible. The main goals of the pilot was, one, as I shared, is really to open up access to support for affordable childcare for staff. Two was really to look at the workforce challenges, right? We hear, and I think we've heard probably every board meeting, the challenges that are in the workforce around retention and recruitment. So that's one of our other big goals. And the other thing was just to help the families be able to offset the cost that they're spending for personal child care. So who's eligible? So currently or newly employed staff. Who do we consider staff? Staff are the educators, staff are the cafeteria staff are the greeters. If you work in the program, you're eligible for accessing this priority access, right? And I should highlight, this is priority access to the wait list, right? To access income eligible, you have to come through the wait list. And so I'm happy to share, as of today, we've reached 1,181 children. 1,181 children. In a month. Right, in a month. And of that 1,181, we have enrolled 140. And so I don't know about you, but that's exciting. And the others that are like in between are in process, right? And what our hopes is that those numbers will continue to increase month by month. What are we hoping to learn? Did we change their lives? Did we was economic mobility easier for them, right? Did we reduce the stress? Right? We hear with COVID, things have changed drastically for a lot of families, mine included. I'm a mom of an 11 and a 21-year-old. That looked different. I had a kid going in middle school and I have one in college. And so COVID hit differently for them. So to reduce the stress for parents is really important. So I'm hoping we'll learn from that. And we'll also learn by increasing the threshold. Right? Were we able to help more families? And the biggest one we really are hoping to learn is, did we help staff stay in programs, right? Did this really shift the paradigm for them, right? Did this make some kind of shift? And also, are more families interested? Are there more moms and dads interested in entering the workforce with this pilot? So that's the pilot.
So, Tyrese, can you tell us a little bit about one of the reasons we wanted to run it through the existing child care financial assistance system is that in order to have your staff participate, you have to sign a voucher agreement.
Oh, yeah.
Which means that you have to be able to be willing to participate in the child care financial assistance system. So how many new providers have signed voucher agreements?
70. 70 new providers have signed voucher agreements. And that's huge. You know, as it was shared earlier in the board meeting, about 50% of our licensed providers do not accept subsidies. So now you have 70 more that do. We're hoping, so we're collecting, as you can imagine, we're collecting a lot of data, and we're steadily learning more and more about what we want to know. And we're curious, right? Are they, not only did they sign the voucher agreement, are they accepting their staff as well as others? You know, what we're initially seeing, it's kind of hard to see it, but we're seeing that they're accepting others. It may not just be for the staff in their programs. And so I think that's, you know, that's a definite benefit. I think that was probably the most surprising data that we shared with you, Commissioner, in this initial.
And if we make it easier to do business, or this new experience allows providers to see the benefits of participating in the subsidy system. I just want to say two other things, and then we'll move on. One is I want to thank our child care resource and referral agencies who've been our partners in this, and they dedicated staff to focus exclusively on this population and expedite people through the process. And so I want to thank them for their partnership and work in learning and how it's going. I got an email from a child care program who I don't think had ever participated in the subsidy system. She had 3 staff who were eligible, and she said one of her staff was going to be able to send her kid to camp for the very first time as a result of participating, and other staff who'd be able to defray costs. One of them said partly defray the cost of her electric bill. We still have work to do, obviously. But thank you, Tyrese, for your leadership on this program, and I think we're going to be learning a lot over the next several months. But obviously, we've tapped a big need in the field, and if there's a way we can continue to grow and support our educators and our programs to be able to support their staff, we hope to be able to do that. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Now we're going to hit on kind of our other 3 key things that we're doing. We're thinking about this campaign and job board that would basically elevate the field and make it easier to connect folks. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what we're doing on family child care, what our partners are doing on family child care, what we're thinking about on center-based, and what our partners are doing. So.
Thank you. I think the job board and the campaign really speak for themselves, and as that develops, we can spend more time talking about it. But it's a way to bring people into the field and then have a landing place for them to get jobs. And all of that work is under development right now. But I think in the interest of time, I will pass it on to Sarah to talk about the ways in which we're supporting entry into FCC roles and into the center-based role.
So as we know, the workforce crisis is evident across our entire workforce, including our family and child care
Sarah, will you
educators.
just introduce yourself in case some of the
Sorry.
members of
Hi.
the board haven't
Good
met you, and
afternoon,
for those on the
everybody.
phone?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Sarah Volkina. I'm the Director of Innovation and Support. At EEC, it's a really great pleasure to be here. Nice to meet you, Mr. Secretary. Hi, Chairperson, Chair, and Commissioner and members of the board. So thank you. So, you know, as we think about the ways that we need to support recruitment and retention of the workforce, we know that we need to develop different strategies for different program types. Family child care educators are most often women of color who are operating small businesses in their home. They play a really, really important role in our system, both in the workforce, but also as an important choice for children and for families, providing very flexible options for families in small settings in their home, and in many ways very connected to the communities in which they are living. And so what we also know is that there's more growth in the family childcare sector than there is in any other part of the workforce in Massachusetts. And what we also are learning is that there's tremendous challenge in people entering the workforce and being able to navigate complex systems. And I think we see a tremendous opportunity ahead of us to think about the ways that we can provide more comprehensive supports to family and childcare educators in becoming licensed and serving the very important role in the system that they do. And so again, I think when we talk about what the opportunity is, I think it's important to note that we have an incredible amount of partners in the field that are already doing some of this work, and so some of which you'll hear from today. We have an existing infrastructure that includes our family child care systems, professional development centers, and other professional development providers that have really been rising to the occasion to address the issues that are in front of us and bringing these providers into the field and these educators into the field. And I think what our goal is to think about what we can learn from our partners, how we can leverage and accelerate what they're already doing and not duplicate what exists, but think about what we are hearing and how we can create and consider offering a more comprehensive package of supports to bring family child care educators into the workforce, but also importantly to sustain and retain them and support them in being successful. And so what you'll see, I think, represented on this slide is really just our kind of different stages of thinking about where we need to support family child care educators differently. So we're thinking about pre-licensing, early licensure, but also the ongoing support that is needed to support their professional advancement in their own leadership capacity. And when we talk about the different types of supports that we want to focus on, we're talking about things that will support their licensing, their ability to meet our regulations and navigate the complex systems that we have, but also importantly to support them as small business owners and also as educators that are really doing the important work of supporting children's learning and development and also supporting families. So, I think what we are noting is a really important kind of sequence of supports that needs to be really carefully thought out, but needs to be provided in an individualized way that meets family child care educators where they are and in the ways that they learn and the ways that they need to be supported. So again, I think the opportunity we have ahead of us is to think about what are the services that we need to make available, but also how. The multiple modalities of learning, so it's supporting through coaching and mentoring, through coursework and training, but importantly, in the context of them doing their work, instead of the expectation of them kind of leaving their setting to develop their skills. So again, I think, when we think about the role that EEC can play, we think about the ways that we can provide some comprehensive supports in places where they don't exist already, leverage what already exists, but also importantly, think about the ways that we can create efficiencies and tools in the things that we have most control over, which include our licensing, regulation and processes as an example. We also think that there's an opportunity for EEC to provide leadership and co-design of these services. Like, we have really good ideas and good thinking about what we think is going to work, but we also need to have the ability to reflect and understand if what we're doing is working and make adjustments as needed. So we really see EEC as being able to play an important role in doing that, and also the ways in which we are able to coordinate some of our existing resources to bring those to the table to support the ongoing professional growth of the educators themselves. So there's been a lot of thinking that has happened. I think for the sake of time and to make sure that we are elevating the voices of the people who are doing this work, who I have the pleasure of talking to, I think, in the most immediate term, in the shorter term, I think our goal right now is to think about the ways that we can support entry into the field to reach the pre-pandemic number of educators, so we can make sure that we can, at least bring ourselves to that capacity. But we also know that we need to keep an eye on the fact that over the course of the past 10 years, there's been a very steep decline in family childcare. And so we need to kind of keep that in mind as we're trying to work through the short-term goal. And again, there's a lot of design work and thinking in process. So we're trying to understand what's available now, what the gaps are. And I think most immediately what we see a gap, and when we talk about the support for educators, we're also needing to talk about the infrastructure around them. And we know for family child care educators, there are very natural and informal networks and opportunities for leadership for family child care educators to support their peers. And we think that that's going to be a really critical component of any sort of support that we can provide, and that is an immediate gap and something we see as a need. And so we are working hard to really be clear about what our targets are and the ways that we think that we can kind of accelerate and not duplicate what exists. But I think, again, for the interest of time, I want to invite our panel up, who will be talking about the work that they are doing to support family child care educators. So I will move out of here. So they
Thank
have
you,
the space.
Sarah, but
Yes.
you'll be back, right?
Yeah,
You're
I'll be
gonna come
back.
back,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
So we think we have a direct role on the family child care side, in addition to supporting. Please, panelists, come up. I'm going to have you introduce yourselves when you get here. That there is something proactively we can be doing about getting out there and recruiting new providers and learning through that process how to make it easier. We have a very passive sort of experience now where folks seek a license and we help them get it, but there's probably something more we could be doing, and I hope our panelists will share some of that. So thank you so much for joining us today, for your leadership, for your creative thinking, and for your partnership. I promised them I was not going to fumble through their introductions, but I was going to ask them just to introduce themselves. So you want to start on this side?
Sure.
Okay.
Hi, good afternoon, Secretary, Commissioner, Chair, members of the board. My name is Liz Sheehan Castro. I'm the director of the Massachusetts Child Care Training Fund with the SCIU Education and Support Fund.
Are we just doing
Great.
introductions?
Yeah, and then we can come back around. Thank you.
Fantastic. Good afternoon. My name is Melinda Weber. I am the Vice President of Shared Services at United Way of Mass Bay. I am very excited to be here and want to wish you all a happy Valentine's Day.
Myra.
Good afternoon. I'm Myra Rosado. I am the Senior Director for our Family Child Care Network in Nurturing Early Education. I've been in the field for over 13 years, and this is probably one of the most exciting times in the field, so I'm very excited to be part of this time in our career.
And I'm Laura Peril, President and CEO of Nurturing Early Education, and here to be Myra's cheerleader.
We're all here to be Myra's cheerleader. Actually, she is the cheerleader to the family child care providers,
Yes,
as we saw when we were
absolutely.
visiting. So we've asked our panelists to come and share a little bit about what they're doing, the projects, the ideas, and the work that they're up to, and maybe to add a few comments after you describe the work you're doing, about your thoughts about how we, as an agency, could be most helpful to you as you do your work. So why don't we start with Nurturing?
Okay, thank you, Commissioner, and happy to be up here again. And I did have a chance to introduce a little bit earlier, but I want to mention again that Nurturing Early Education supports both center-based programs and also a robust and growing family child care system with a network of all-female, largely Latina small business owners who have been rapidly expanding access to care for families. And our mission at Nurturing is to provide high-quality care and education in a variety of settings for families, whether they seek centers or increasingly family child care. And particularly with the many challenges at staffing centers, we see real innovation and growth potential in family child care. Our numbers have rebounded faster, both in number of providers and number of children served in family child care. And so we see our job as knocking down barriers to center-based educators and to family child care. So I want to applaud both the work of the panel that was just up here before us and the EEC in general for leaning into innovation and experimentation, particularly in the family child care space. So the problem we're trying to solve with our innovation, which is launching later this spring and early summer, a family child care incubator, which borrows concepts from both incubators in the nonprofit and for-profit space and many other sectors, but also co-working and shared space. So one of the challenges, and this is way outside the bounds of the current licensing system, so we really appreciate the fact that EEC has leaned into this to help us see how we could stand up a pilot and then see what could be learned to determine if deeper policy changes are needed so that this could be replicated. But this is basically getting at the fact that where we see a lot of growth and interest in home-based small businesses, we know that there are even more providers, often family child care assistants or classroom educators, who would like to enter the field but don't yet have the space. We also find currently licensed educators who are operating strong programs serving 10 children who suddenly lose their housing or their landlord changes their mind and they suddenly lose their housing and immediately shut down their program, closing off childcare to 10 or more families. So space is an issue, and the question was if we provided space as one of the on-ramps into family childcare, could we create an on-ramp for more providers? So with that, I'll let Myra explain how we might do it.
Sure. So as Laura already laid out for us, the vision is to have a shared working space in one of our locations where we'll have space available for 3 of FCC educators who want to join the field, be it that they don't have a space already or that they're just not sure how to enter the field. We will give them that space where they can be for 6 to 24 months. 24 months is the max. The target would be to 12 to 18 months. So it's kind of a transitional space where they can work together. Nurture will be there. We'll have nursery staff helping them along the way, helping them through licensing, helping them through professional development, understanding what it is to become a FCC provider, and what it takes to be a qualified FCC provider. Once they leave the space, they should be able to go into their own programs. While they're there, the expectation is that they're working and finding a location. Nurture will also be there to help them through that process, and it should be a nice streamlined process right into their own homes. So that's kind of the overall concept of it. And as far as the department's additional support, it would be ideal for us to continue receiving guidance in regards to licensing policies, with major thanks to Andrew Rome and Kelly Meehan and their respective teams who have really helped us understand policies up to this point and kind of just help us bring this to life. When we first started about it, we were like, well, this is a no-go, but then we're like, let's try it. We never know. So thank you to them for helping us navigate that and actually bringing it to life. In addition to this, we'll also need the subsidy team to get involved to help us understand and come up with a sustainable cost model, right? That will be beneficial to both the growth of the providers' small businesses, but also take into account the level of administrative and program support that will entail to be able to make this successful and sustainable. We believe that this pilot will enable more qualified FCC educators to join the field and increase childcare access to families. However, if our efforts are successful, as we intend, hopefully, this has the potential to serve as a replicable model for other programs across the state. So in order to do that, Nurture is committed to investing in this pilot through our own seed funding and philanthropy. However, if this innovation does go long-term and does end up expanding and our colleagues do want to join in and sponsor something like this as well, it would be ideal and great for it to be a collaborative approach, right? How do we come up with a cost model that will help both the businesses and the agencies to help them do this, right? So we would need funding, technical support, professional development, amongst other things that will help benefit the providers grow and continue to have more providers join the field. It's we're just thinking about pumping providers into the field, qualified providers, and just build capacity across the field and access to our families. So thank you again. Thank you for having us.
And Myra and Laura, you're using empty classrooms in your center-based programs, is that?
Yes, one of our classrooms that we had to, one of our centers that we had to close.
We have a micro center that only had 2 to 3 classrooms. It is currently closed due to lack of staffing. And our initial thought was, how could we repopulate it with staff? And then we realized that we still have closed classrooms in our larger centers, and that's what turned our attention to, could this be an on-ramp for more providers? So they will literally have their own dedicated FCC-type space. We're retrofitting this center to create 3 standalone spaces that mirror what an FCC program might be inside someone's home, for people who do not yet have that kind of space.
Well, we are here standing with you to support you and learning how to push boundaries in our licensing. I want to thank Andrew and Kelly Meehan, who's our regional director for the Greater Boston area, who's been creatively thinking about how to within the boundaries of our licensing, which sometimes people don't put those things together in the same sentence. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to do that as well. Great. Melinda, do you want to share a little bit what's up with United Way? Yeah.
I do, but first, that is super exciting.
We see a nice continuity
Yes,
between
yeah,
your
right,
pre-licensing
exactly. Here we go.
program and our
All right.
space model.
What a lovely segue. Yes, so at United Way, our shared services program, we have built a continuum of supports for family childcare educators to build strong businesses, those strong businesses that Sarah referred to. So we start with pre-licensing, and we've developed a curriculum to guide our future family childcare educators through the licensing system. Once they've gotten their license, we have a number of additional supports, not only for the newly licensed educators, but also for educators who have been in the field. So over 1,000 educators have gone through our business training for family childcare educators, where we train on the fundamentals of the family childcare business model. The family childcare business model is complex, it is challenging at best, and it is unique. Family childcare educators are trained as just that. They're trained as educators. They're not typically trained as entrepreneurs. And as Sarah also mentioned, each and every one of these, mostly women, we do have some men, are small business owners. So we want to give them the tools to be able to maximize profitability, because if you're a family childcare business owner, your profitability is essentially your salary. So another program that we offer is training on developmental screening for family childcare educators. We train educators on how to work with families to use the Ages and Stages questionnaire to screen for developmental challenges, developmental needs. Once those challenges have been identified, we help them understand how to have these difficult conversations with parents, right? That is a skill that is not easy to do, that is scary. We help them understand where to refer families for the needed resources, and we also help them understand how to modify their curriculum to meet the individual needs of these children. We're certainly not the only ones out there, as I look around this room, doing that for our children and our educators, but we feel that it is an important component of building that strong business. We have a really, really fun marketing course where we guide family childcare educators through publishing a website. If you were to go on to the internet and Google family childcare near me, you would most likely get a number of websites, center-based websites, with a mission and a vision and lovely pictures, so that families know what they're sending their child care, where they would like to choose to send their children, what they might like to look at. Doesn't really exist for family child care. And one of the reasons is because, like all of us, technology is a huge barrier for this sector in particular. Another huge barrier is language. Many, many, many of the educators that we work with, English is not their first language. So we are privileged enough to be able to do our training in English and Spanish. And many, many thanks to the support of EEC, our business training is now being delivered in Portuguese and Mandarin. We feel very blessed to be able to deliver this in all of these languages. What else? Oh, it's delivered. These workshops that I just described are a series of 12-week workshops, and the educators graciously and gratefully join us through completion. They're delivered by peers. We have a group, a team of peer instructors and peer coaches who guide the educators through these programs. Coaching is deeply embedded into our model. That is incredibly important in order to affect change. The last thing that I'll talk about is we also have a series of technical assistance workshops that are delivered. They're one-evening workshops on wealth-building topics, such as retirement planning. We hear a lot that people need more information, more actionable information on how to plan for retirement, taxes, business structure, because whether you set your business up as a corporation or an LLC has implications for your taxes and your risk, quite honestly. We do managing debt and credit building, among other things. So we are very, very grateful. We couldn't do this alone. We are supported by EEC, by the City of Boston, and by private philanthropy.
Thank you. Liz, tell us a little bit what SEIU is up to.
Sure. First, I just want to say these are all such exciting initiatives to be up here talking about. So the SEIU Education and Support Fund, so we're a 501c3 and we work nationally. I'm the director of our Massachusetts Child Care Training Fund program, which was created and launched in 2019 as part of the collectively bargained agreement between SEIU 509 and EEC. I had the joy of launching a program just a few months before a global pandemic, but it turned out to actually be an incredible gift and allowed us to be very nimble and spend a lot of that time building amazing relationships with educators, who I taught how to use Zoom over the phone very often. So we work statewide across all EEC regions, across 70 different cities and towns. We reach currently about 700 family child care educators a year. The educators that are part of the SEIU 509 bargaining unit is any educator that is serving children with subsidies or vouchers. So it's about 2,700 educators roughly at this time. So we're primarily funded through the collectively bargained agreement, though as a 501c3, we do seek private philanthropy to supplement that funding, and so that we can also occasionally serve private FCCs as well, because I really hate having to say no to anybody that signs up for our trainings or our programs. So we work to be as accessible as we can be. So we operate several different programs. So we operate a variety of trainings and workshops really based off of the needs as expressed to us by the family child care educators we work with. About 3/4 of our programming are in languages other than English. The vast majority is in Spanish, but we also provide trainings and workshops in Portuguese as well. Within our general body of trainings and workshops, we do a lot of that work through contracting with really amazing trainers throughout the state, some of whom are family child care educators themselves, have been in the field, and others who are just really great content experts on a variety of topics. We also have started to implement our own series of trainings. We call it the I Am framework, to really ground folks in the work that is family child care. So it's a series of really entry-level type foundational workshops, we think of them as, such as I am an educator, I am an entrepreneur, I am a leader, I am a worker, I am a human being. And that one is really focused on the self-care needed to go into this amazing but challenging work. We also have some programs that are more focused on leadership pathways. We have so many amazing, experienced family child care educators across the state who informally put a lot of that into practice by supporting their peers, and we look for ways to support and formalize that. So one is our peer mentorship program. So experienced family child care educators can go through this training with us. It's a 20-hour training really focused on the skills and abilities of how to be a mentor. After they complete that, they are paired with a mentee that is looking for mentorship in one of two ways: through a pre-licensure, so they're working towards becoming a family child care educator, or we call it holistic quality improvement. So they are in their first couple years as a family child care educator and are really looking for support and how to determine and advance their own quality programming. Our peer mentors are, they sign up for 6 months of mentorship, and they are compensated with a monthly stipend, and they also receive monthly support through like an ongoing meeting and refresher of skills, problem-solving type space with their fellow mentors. We currently have 33 trained mentors across 3 languages, covering really all the EEC regions of the state. And we just launched a new cohort with an exciting partnership with Enable Cole Harrington, where we're training a group of their family child care educators who they'll then pair internally within their own agency. So we're excited about that. We also are working to train family child care educators to become trainers themselves. As we started launching this work, we really found a shortage of folks that could be professional trainers, especially in languages other than English. And while I found a couple superstars, I was afraid of overworking them, and I said we really need to figure out how to grow our own. So we launched a program in 2021 to do that. It's very intensive work, and we have a cohort of about 6 who have really continued through it since 2021 and continue to act as training assistants and receive ongoing coaching in the hopes that they'll eventually be able to be professional trainers themselves. And then the hopefully soon to launch Good Jobs Challenge is a space we're working with partners here and hopes to really support that pre-licensure phase in the greater Boston area, so that we can continue to support family child care educators coming into the field. We were able to be part of a pilot with La Colaborativa in Chelsea, and that was, I think, a really great precursor to this Good Jobs Challenge work, where they, as an organization, were trying to build a pipeline, and we were providing mentorship, and through that work together, really learned a lot of the challenges that I think have been named already. And so we're finding a really high demand for the mentorship in particular by both mentors and mentees, and we'd really like to be able to continue to expand that type of work and including the work for the trainers. And I think, as we look to be able to scale, I think private philanthropy has been really touch and go, I think, over the last couple of years, as I think, especially with the pandemic, there's been a lot of funders needing to reevaluate their own priorities. And so sometimes that flows with where we're going, but sometimes they're looking at supporting different needs. And so we're just finding it challenging to scale, I think, in the way that we would like to.
Great, thank you so much. Seems like a lot of common themes about supporting all the way through the process, and it feels to me like we have this opportunity, both as we focus on building additional capacity to learn how to support our educators to come into the field and stay in the field through all of the sort of common and new kinds of incubating ideas too. So open it up for any questions from board members before we turn to recruitment and retention for center-based.
Can I just make a comment?
Please.
I just want to acknowledge there is some intention behind this, right? The commission and I often talk about all of the assets that are in this field, and we have 4 sitting in front of us right now and I know you have lots of teams behind each one of you that are doing this work, but it's important to share these examples. And when we think about mindset, you can see it here today, whether it's the team at EEC or all of you, the way that people are leaning in to think about how to break down those barriers and create more access and create more affordability. And so just want to, as I know the next panel will amplify that as well. But I do want to acknowledge, like, we're getting a 2-minute, taste of all the hard work that you're doing. But I do think it's important for us, because we have been talking about what is the role of the agency going forward in this space. And when we hear about the things that are happening with multiple partners, yourself, community partners, philanthropy, like this is a mixed delivery system with mixed partners in order for it to be successful, and we need to figure that out. So I just want to acknowledge that we're talking about a lot of things here, but the themes are all there, right? It's about how we think differently, how we create more access, how we create the supports for people to be successful. And so just want to acknowledge that as we welcome our last panel up here.
Right, break down barriers, make the system in service to those who are working with kids and families. So thank you so
And
much
thank
for
you
your
for that.
leadership
Thank
and
you.
your partnership. Yeah.
Thank
So, Sarah, why don't I have you come up, and also our center-based panel, and We might need to just add at least one more chair from over here. Great, and then Sarah, do we need one more, or is that fine? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. Come on, and we'll have you guys introduce yourselves. I probably should have said at the beginning of the meeting that we're trying to end at 3:15, which we are not going to cut off this panel. So I doubt we're going to hit 3:15, but part of my moving everyone along is on the timeline for the board. This is so fantastic. I'm so happy to see all of you. So what I'd like to do is have Sarah do a little bit of an introduction about the work that our working group and the agency has been thinking about in terms of urgent recruitment and retention. And then we will turn it over to the panel for each of you to introduce yourselves and then share a little bit about what you're doing. So Sarah, why don't you kick us off, and then we'll turn to the panel.
Great, thank you. So as I was noting before, as we talk about supported pathways to entry and retention, we need to think differently about different program types. And so when we talk about the workforce crisis, we know that in center-based programs, there's an increasing crisis, right? So a lot of unfilled capacity due to workforce shortages, and it's becoming harder to find educators that are qualified to fill that capacity. And we know that if we were to fill that capacity, we could serve upwards of 10,000 to 15,000 more children, right? So the challenge ahead of us is great. And again, I think what you see represented here are a few partners doing some really, really incredible work. And so when we talk about the opportunities and the goals that EEC has, we both want to build the supply and retention of this part of the workforce, but we also want to make sure that we are attending to the systems building and the infrastructure that is required to retain those staff once they are coming into the field, right? So when we're talking about supported pathways, we're talking about both entry but also retention, and doing that in very job-embedded ways. And so apprenticeships and other workforce training programs are a really important structured pathway that there's a lot of opportunities. They're really bringing together lots of different partners to support educators, importantly, in navigating very complex systems and also very, very complex work. And so when we talk about, what, at least in my emerging understanding of the work that is happening, there's a lot of common elements that I think are really important to elevate here that I'm sure that this panel will definitely do a good job of doing that. But I think also importantly aligned to what we are thinking about around the credential, right? So we're talking about making sure that there are pathways that are clear, but that also represent the tremendous leadership that needs to happen in the classroom and at the program level to really make sure that the conditions are right to grow competency, to support skill development, and treat our educators with the respect and the support that they need to be successful. And so, I think what strikes me about what I hear from the work, and that's very aligned, is we're talking about, the basics of leadership development, right? And making sure that there's pathways that people can see themselves, supporting reflection, planning, collaboration at the program, all in service of supporting children's learning and development, which again, cannot be understated, the amount of infrastructure that is needed around educators to make this happen. And so, there are a lot of incredible partners, innovators in this space doing this work who are bridging and making relationships that haven't existed before or haven't been happening in a very coordinated way. And so there's a tremendous opportunity in that space. But importantly, I think what strikes me is, again, the attention to the infrastructure that is needed to support these new educators and coming into the field. And again, in the classroom, mentor teachers, right, and making sure that there are opportunities to support that capacity in an ongoing way, but also the role of center-based leaders and the responsibility that they have in partnership with their educators and creating the conditions to support learning. So, again, I think they can represent this work much better than I can, but just to provide a little bit of a sense of the things that we're thinking about and the ways that we see it connecting across multiple strategies of the department. So,
great. Thank you, Sarah. I think we're, on the family child care side, we're thinking, picking up on all the innovative strategies and the themes about what kinds of support family child care. We think we can get into the helping and recruiting and supporting and breaking down barriers. In this space, I think we're still trying to figure out the best way to support all of you and what you're doing. And this panel sort of is taking different approaches at getting pipeline and supporting folks into the field. I think you'll hear some common themes about entry level and paid work. And but I think this is a conversation where we're really thinking, like, what is the best way for us to insert ourselves here? So I'm going to ask the panelists to each introduce themselves, and then we'll come back around and have you give a couple minutes on what you're doing, and then a few minutes for discussion. So, Beenal, do you want to start?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having us. My name is Beenal Patel. I'm the Chief Program Officer at Neighborhood Villages.
Hi, I'm Christine Trainer, and I'm Head of Recruiting at Little Sprouts.
Hi, Mandy Townsend. I'm the Senior VP of Employer Engagement at JVS Boston.
Hi, I'm Barbara Gallagher. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the community group.
Hi, Katie Graham. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer here at the community group in Lawrence.
Great, and since we're in your house, Katie, I thought we could start with you, and Maria, I don't know if you want to jump into or leave it to Katie, but.
I'll leave it to them. They know
Yeah.
what I'm talking about.
Well, first, welcome everyone to Lawrence. Just want to say on behalf of your hosts here how excited we are to have you here. So we're representing Community Group located here in Lawrence. For those that don't know much about the agency, just we're a large multi-program nonprofit. We've been around for 50 plus years. Like Nurtury, we have a range of childcare programs, family childcare, out of school time, as well as our center-based programs. So today that's what we're going to be talking about a little bit. We have 4 center-based programs here in Lawrence. We serve around 400 children from infants up through kindergarten. We have income eligible and supportive contracts. So again, most of our families do receive tuition assistance through the subsidy system. And then we also have a training department. We're also the Regional Professional Development Center for EEC here in the region. So kind of with that training lens and our childcare lens, that's sort of how we're going to be talking to you today about our mentor-mentee program that we developed here in Lawrence as sort of a community-wide strategy to solve a lot of the problems we've been talking about today. So I'm just going to give you a few bare bones details about the program, and then I'm going to turn it over to Barbara. This was really her brainchild, and she's been the one kind of shepherding it day to day. So she'll tell you kind of the history and a lot more details about it. But currently we have 24 mentees enrolled here in Lawrence. 9 of them will be graduating from the program end of this month, beginning of March. And we are expecting all of them will have positions offered to them in licensed childcare programs. So we have 7 that are getting ready to start a mentee placement. And then we also, this is paired with a teacher training cohort. And so we have about 26 people who are currently in that new teacher training cohort, so not enrolled in the mentor-mentee program, but would potentially have interest, as well as 24 on a wait list to take child growth and development at Urban College, who is our partner in this endeavor. So we're hoping that they will get funded to be able to start a new cohort of this as well. So that's just sort of bare bones what the program is that we're talking about, and I'll let Barbara tell us a little bit about the history.
Sure. Thank you, everybody. During COVID, we were able to support current educators enrolling in college courses to further their education, and we were able to provide support so that they could complete their CDA and advance their EEC certification. But once programs started to reopen, it was a real struggle to keep classrooms open for many reasons, some of which were changing needs of staff due to the impact of COVID on their own families, lack of childcare for current staff, decrease of EEC certified educators, and then a low pool of new educators just entering the field. TCG felt firsthand how the childcare field staffing pipeline was dying and the stress that it was causing on administrators and other educators. We already had established a partnership with Urban College to grow and support current educators and saw the need for supporting the recruitment of new to the field educators. We then developed a teacher training program modeled after what North Shore Community College had started a little bit earlier. And we tailored that to meet the needs of our community. And our teacher training program provided support and training to brand new educators entering the field. And it was offered in the primary language of the educators in our community, which is Spanish. It incorporated the basic core competencies educators needed to be introduced to and aware of when entering the field. We prepared educators in finding employment within the field by supporting them to create a portfolio of needed hiring documents as they went on to be interviewed and eventually hired. We also provided CPR and first aid computer skills to everybody who participated in our teacher training, and we reimbursed educators for the VRC fingerprinting. These are just a couple of examples and some of the components that made up our teacher training program. We realized that no matter how good our program was, new to the field educators, they kept hitting a barrier of securing a job because they were not EEC certified, and programs were under immense pressure to keep classrooms open and couldn't do that if they couldn't staff their classrooms with uncertified educators. So the number of EEC certified educators in the field was decreasing and just causing another layer of stress to already stressed out administrators. We collaborate with many agencies in our community, and we kept hearing the same message over and over from all of them. They can't keep classrooms open. We need certified teachers. We heard that the experienced teachers were feeling disrespected, unvalued, and they didn't really have advancement for growth. And quite frankly, the administrators were really stressed and couldn't provide that support to mentor them and give them that leadership opportunity. Because of this need, we created the mentor-mentee program. We piloted it within our own agency. And then as it grew, we collaborated with local early child care programs within Lawrence, and we began to develop a community-wide approach to solving the child care staffing issue. It was important during this process that we continue to professionalize the field, so we required that all mentees make a set pay and that the mentors be paid a stipend. We immediately started placing new to the field educators in classrooms while they completed child growth and the teacher training program, all at the same time. These new to the field educators were able to develop new skills and put into practice while they were learning from Urban College, the teacher training program, and their mentor. We were also able to provide support to administrators by providing additional coaching and helping to develop leadership skills in those chosen to be mentors. TCG, we've revamped our pay scale to move towards a living wage for educators. We continue to increase our pay scale and benefit package to not only professionalize the field, but ensure we're building back and stabilizing the childcare workforce in our community. This would not have been possible without United Way funds, our C3 funding, private donors, and also our Urban College Community Partnership Grant, which is funded by UEEC. Our program has improved over time, with the key components being new to the field educators paired with seasoned teachers as mentors, a minimum pay rate agreed to by all the partners that are accepting these new to the field educators into their programs. Paid supervised hand-on work experience, not just observing or wiping tables, and it was important for us that it was a paid position because who can afford to be working for 9 months, not getting paid, and then be qualified and hope maybe
Seems
they
like
get
a
job?
common theme, that what we want to make sure is that people are being paid. So I think one of the unique things about that you started it internally as a mentor-mentee program, but then you saw the need across the communities. And one of the things when I first learned about this program from Maria is just that you were sort of cobbling together how you were paying them, how you were figuring out the mentees. So I wonder, just because we need to get to the, if you could just say a little bit about sort of where you think EEC support could sort of have. So you saw a need in the community and you filled it. You raised funds for it. You put C3 funds to it. Like, where are ways that this could be scaled or maintained at the community level?
Yeah, I think, if EEC could provide some workforce grants to agencies like ours who are doing this work and to other partners that you've already heard from, more of the community partnership grants.
Yeah.
Specifically like ours with Urban College, we have the relationship with these new to the field educators, and we're able to connect them and help build their self-esteem.
And Urban College has been able to provide the kind of accessible entry-level work for coursework, and that's why you have a waiting list.
Yes.
There. Okay. All right.
I
Yeah, go
would just
ahead,
add one
please.
other thing,
Yeah.
just because I think it relates to what we were talking about earlier. I think there's an opportunity as you're re-looking at what that process is going to be for educators to enter into a pathway, to think about sort of what this mentee role could look like within that pathway, because it is a little bit unique, right? In that it's a highly supported on-the-job learning temporary experience, but there's not really sort of regulations around that and around how it might be a little bit different than a brand new teacher. Who's
No, our
certified yet,
regulations
or an
start as
experienced
certification.
teacher.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think there's an opportunity for EEC also just to kind of learn from what are some of the needs around regulation and certification for these on-the-job learning roles, I would add.
Yeah, and as we are looking at the pathway, I think, this is what we want. If we don't create a pathway that supports this, then we've totally missed the mark. And if we don't think about the allocation of our resources into higher education that doesn't support the needs of the folks that you're bringing in and supporting to succeed, then I think we've also kind of missed the mark. So thank you so much for your sort of kicked off this whole thinking. Mandy and Christine, you guys have a unique kind of partnership in this, a little bit of a different approach to onboarding and getting folks into the field. I wonder if you could share with us.
Yeah, we'll talk about two things. So I'm the interloper in the room. I've been into childcare only since 2021. So JVS Boston sort of sits at this beautiful intersection.
Pretty good. There's a few
Good.
club members here for you.
Excellent,
Yeah.
excellent. So we're at the intersection of our job seekers and our employer partners. So we see about 12,000 job seekers a year and 500 employer partners. And so we're at the supply and the demand on the teeter-totter. So we're right there in the middle. And so for many years, we've been running talent pipelines in healthcare where we were getting people into paid healthcare training jobs. And instead of sort of the traditional train and pray model, like let's train up a bunch of people and pray we can get them jobs, we actually reversed that where the employer guaranteed jobs on the front end so people could commit to the training and know at the end of it they're going to have a job. And so that's a more equitable strategy across the board because we could also negotiate the wages and the full-time benefits and the people could tell if they could get there and what bus they needed to take, et cetera. So we've been doing that in healthcare for quite a while with really great success. People were earning $10,000 more a year, having better job outcomes, and we were approached by the CARE Institute to do it in childcare, and we thought, oh no, these jobs, how are we going to negotiate these jobs? And so after some talking around it, we thought, if people don't have childcare, they can't enter any of our other programs, and they can't even enter the workforce or the economy, so we better get into childcare. We can sit and complain, or we could do something about it. So we decided to try a healthcare pipeline, and so our first pilot was funded by the CARE Institute. We replicated it last year, and we're in the third year now doing our fourth cohort. And so our model is to recruit and screen folks for our employer partners. So we have 17 employer partners, of which Chrissy is one and Laura's team is one. And so we make sure that people can get to those jobs, can do the hours, are interested, and then they start working before they start training as assistant teachers. So they're earning money, they're getting paid, we provide them a stipend, and then they get the child growth and development, again from Urban College, shout out to our friends there. And that's one of our asks for you is to continue supporting Urban College, even though they're outside of the community college system, because they are tailored to our population. We have 9 countries and 5 languages, and so they do a lot for us. And so once folks start working, then they start getting those credits to get their child growth and development. They become lead teachers, and then they can move on. And so in our pipeline, it's a built-in hierarchy, so people can see the career trajectory that they might be able to have, which is a really beautiful thing in your marketing and outreach materials by saying, this employer has committed to hiring you as this, and if you stay, you can be this in 6 months, and you can be this in 9 months, et cetera. So we've screened over 1,000 people and enrolled 107. So a 10-to-1 ratio is not great. I will say that right off the top. We'd like to be down to like screening 2 and taking 1, but the problem is a lot of people can't afford to do these jobs. They don't have the supports in place to be there. So that's what our agency works to do, and we work in partnership with Neighborhood Villages on the pathway funding to fund the classes, and our employer partners. And one of the other things I wanted to mention about retention, someone else said it, is that our folks are retaining 83% of the time at their 90 days, which is pretty good. I mean, we'd obviously like it to be higher, but we're at 100% for 30 days, 100% for 60 days, and then 83% for 90 days. And some of our folks, especially at Little Sprouts, have been there the whole 2 years since our pilot and are growing. And so I'm going to pass it to Chrissy in just 1 second, but I also want to say we help our employers to understand what's happening competitively. And so in the field, sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and everybody thinks it's just pay. I got to raise my pay. I got to raise my pay. We learned in the pandemic, it's not about pay. It's about schedule. It's about if there's a bus to your job. It's about if you can have a childcare voucher. And so we started something called the Job Quality Benchmarking Index, and we have a data set of about 65 childcare employers. And so our employers get our summary report that shows them in ranked order how they're doing on 5 pillars that were identified by our job seekers. And so if you're getting a report that says you're number 1, you can pat yourself on your back, but if you're getting a report that says you're number 35, you can look at that and say, oh gosh, all right, what can I do? And then we have some job quality coaching that we've been doing with Neighborhood Villages and others to help employers, because really, we want to be in partnership, not in a punishment mode, and we really want to help employers improve their jobs so they can access the talent pool. And so Chrissy's going to share that from her perspective, but the 2 things I wanted to mention is keep doing the childcare vouchers that you mentioned, the pilot. Our clients are accessing that. They think it's important. Although one caveat, it does keep the cliff effect into place somehow because it keeps the jobs. You can't make a certain amount. And so if you keep the pay the same, then you fall off the cliff. And so it's a great pilot. I'd like to think about in support of that wider, allowing the jobs to get better at the same time, but not punishing the clients, and then promoting the pathway fundings for Urban College and Quincy College and people that are outside of the community college system, and then promoting the JQBI. But I'm going to pass to Chrissy just to talk quickly about her perspective.
Thanks, Mandy.
So as far as she had talked about retention and it being, I think you said 83% for us, over the course of the last several years, we've hired upwards of 20 people. I know for a fact that of those 20, 19 are still here. And we were part of that very first cohort in 2021, I think. Yeah. So it's been a couple of years, but Mandy mentioned the Job Quality Index, and that was something that we took as a really nice baseline data set to initiate a wage analysis that we have now committed to doing yearly, because the market has changed tremendously. And I will say that it was enlightening for us to see where we were in regard to the market, but also understand what people coming into the field really wanted to see. So as far as benefits were concerned, and that had to do with also discounting childcare, and that's something that we did. So we are now offering 75% off childcare to our employees. We've also instituted guaranteed paid time off, where we are closed between Christmas and New Year's, and also, that includes holidays and other paid time off, but guaranteed there is a week of time. Actually, it's 10 days because there's some time over 4th of July as well. So that was really important. We also decreased the window, or the eligibility window, so that you can now enroll in our 401k plan after 60 days of employment. And we also do offer a company match. So, I think we've had some really great success here, especially with JVS and also with Neighborhood Villages, and their career pathways training programs. And as far as the minimum requirements, I just wanted to say thank you to the EEC Commission and the board for taking a harder look at that. And in 2022, we were able, with the new requirements, to in-house certify 191 folks, which would have otherwise been an uphill climb. So that's a big one. The other thing I wanted to bring up was some of the background check processing, and also like the fingerprint processing, and just how long it's been taking, and what the backup is there. And like, we have a candidate right now who's one of our JVS candidates, and they are stuck in the BRC process. And so I recently learned that we can advocate on behalf of our employees or potential employees, which is big. But I think that's something, as you start to look at how can we be better supported by the EEC, is to look at that process and understand that 45 days is really not what's happening actually in the field.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. I've been talking about with the board a little bit all the time and energy around the background record check process, because we can't get through that. They can't get to your classrooms, right? So
right.
More work to do for us
We
there.
have
so.
20 people stuck in it right
You
now,
do?
so yeah, so it's a lot.
There are some people listening who are going to talk
Good.
to you after. So
You're in the right place.
What we
Yeah.
should do is at least make sure you know who to call when someone gets stuck, and sometimes there's reasons for that, and so no promises, but they're people you should call when someone gets stuck in the process, because we don't want that to be the reason someone can't get into the classroom with you. So thank you for your leadership and your creativity. I think there's a lot of interesting things for us to learn too. So Beanal, looking, you just launched a new apprenticeship program. We're really excited to hear about it and how we can best support your efforts. And
Great.
You'll have to sort of wrap up work on the
Yes.
panel.
I will be as succinct as possible and excited to share all of the amazing work. So Neighborhood Villages has a pretty extensive portfolio, which I won't get into, some of which you've heard of, the professional pathways, the business training, which we do in partnership with United Way, Urban College, and JVS to launch the workshops. And the third pretty amazing piece that we've added to our workforce portfolio is our apprenticeship program. So we have 2 tracks for our apprenticeship program. The first is a lead teacher track, and the second is the director track. So for the lead teacher program, we had planned to have 25 apprentices and ended up launching with 50 because we had so many applications on the wait list for so long, and really grateful to our philanthropy partners, City of Boston and EOLWD, who made it possible to launch the program and to offer it to more apprentices. This is a very unique pathway in Massachusetts and nationally. It's a non-college pathway towards a CDA. And the non-college was not to deter educators or students towards achieving degrees or their college goals, but really to be that starting point for those that maybe would be intimidated starting at a college pathway or had not considered it before. And so we partner with IEPD, who is accredited by the CDA Council to offer CDA training and offers it for CEUs in both English and Spanish. So this 12-month program for these apprentices, they will graduate with a CDA, which in the current EEC certification is a lead teacher qualification. We are offering every part of wraparound support that we can, including laptops, technology training, English level training if required, stipends for the mentors, down to t-shirts and bags, and really not underestimating the pieces of feeling like a cohort and a supported cohort throughout that pathway and model. We had a very exciting launch with Chrissy was there to, again, through these online trainings, and this is an online training, to really support them in feeling like a cohort as they progress through the program. The apprenticeship program does come with wage bumps, and we did set a minimum wage floor because of our partner at JVS. We learned sort of what employers were at, and so we set a wage floor of $17 that the employers agree to for apprentices. And so these are educators that are not yet perhaps teacher qualified, some of them are, but they had agreed to that $17 an hour and are agreeing to a minimum of a $2 wage bump by the graduation of the program. So in that 1 year when they're lead teacher qualified, the employers are agreeing to pay $19 an hour. We're very excited that this is officially an EOLWD registered apprenticeship program as of last week, late breaking news. And so we are now the second registered apprenticeship. I think you've heard from our good friends at Family Services of Central Mass, who we've learned a lot from and are very excited to continue learning from since they have had a few years of experience in this program. One of the pieces I will say where EEC, or I think where we can all start to support each other, is the navigation in that process of applying for a registered apprenticeship. I know that there are others that we have talked to that are seeking to apply and are in the process of doing so, and we have offered ourselves to provide technical assistance for others. But I think that's one place that collaboration and perhaps support from EEC could really be valuable, because I know that this would be something that others would seek to do, but it has not been an easy process the last 6 months, and we're lucky to have the capacity to do so, but I know other organizations can't. So our second apprenticeship program is our Early Childhood Emerging Leaders, or our Director Apprenticeship Program. We call it ESEL for short. We have multiple PD partners in this program. UMass Boston, Brazelton, Urban, just to name a few, that are already providing training in the field. And so we didn't try to create something when we know that there's great partners and programs that already exist. And we're super, super excited and grateful to partners at EEC who we continue to talk to, because this is a very unique program. It's the first in the state in terms of director apprenticeship. It's only the second in the country. And the only other one that exists is in the Kentucky Governor's Office of Early Childhood, who who are now my very good friends because I call them often and ask a lot of questions and have really helped and supported us in navigating this. That program launched February 6th. We will soon be registered. I hope to tell you very soon when that happens, and are really grateful to DAS for supporting us in that as well. This program is a statewide program. Our lead teacher one is focused in the city of Boston because of our grant funding from the city of Boston. The ESOL program is a statewide program, and we do have providers from every part of the state, from Western Mass to the Cape. And what's really interesting is we have a mix of lead teachers seeking to move up in administrative roles and directors. Actually, 60% of our participants are current directors. So they're already in that role. They already took the Director 1 class. We have 46 ESOL apprentices. And this program really is very near to my heart. I was a director before I joined Neighborhood Villages and an educator before that. And I had taken the Director 1 course, I watched my director, I learned from her, and I was lost on that first day. Like, you do not know how to manage a staff, how to manage a small business. And so this 12-month program really provides that support through each component, through the business training, through the leadership. But really, the most important part is the mentorship piece. And we've heard a lot of great programs around that mentorship piece and are learning from our partners and creating a mentorship program for director mentors. And what I'm really excited about too is we have some directors that are being mentors for multiple apprentices because there are not enough experienced directors currently in the field for this, but also some retired directors that were forced to leave the field during the pandemic that are giving back in this really important way. Again, I think for this piece, for the support for EEC, I would say in recognizing, as you're thinking about the credential, what was already brought up in the apprentice, but also in the mentor. We heard you previously talk about the professionalization and recognition. While we are offering mentor stipends, we've heard from mentors that recognition is equally as important. So whether there's a way for that to be a tier or how that's considered in the credential and qualification, I think is important.
A mentor teacher.
Exactly.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much, Beanal, and to Neighborhood Villages. You guys are the ultimate, like, see a need, fill a need. And that is an amazing partner for us to have. And you can sometimes move faster and lead the way for us. So I want to thank all the panelists for your work and for helping inform the work of the agency. And, you know, we look forward to figuring out how to support you better in this work, whether it's through the how we do the hiring requirements, what we look at in terms of funding, how we partner with higher education, those are being able to be responsive, and and even thinking about the role of mentors and setting standards. So thank you all so very much for your work. So I know we are sort of at time, so I am going to suggest that, our board work, thank you, Sarah, your terrific leadership and partnership on this. We will schedule another meeting of our board's working group and ask you all to sort of hold on to what we've heard today as we chew on this question about the best places for EEC to focus its effort, because it's obviously in multiple opportunities. But I think most of all, we don't want to break anything, right? And we really, and again, I just want to emphasize that, like, we picked a sample of the things that are happening, and so you can see that we're spending a lot of time figuring out what the work is that's going on out there and what our best role is in sort of organizing and amplifying. So thank you for the opportunity to present that to you today.
Thank you, and on behalf of the board, I want to thank all of our panelists as well. I know we invited you to step away from your desk for a couple hours today to share with us, and I know that's not always easy to step away from your program and be there to support the day-to-day operations, but grateful to have you here today to echo the commissioner's comments about what role we can play going forward. And just listening today, and I know this is just a sample of the amazing work that's going on across the Commonwealth, like, it's really exciting. Like, I hope people in this room feel really good about the level of conversation that is happening in this field right now about ways to lean in and think about partnerships in a different way and collaboration in a different way, because you never know when a pilot, I love the educator pilot, that it meets a need every once in a while, right? And you can see immediate results, and we need to replicate that in other places as well and challenge ourselves to think differently. And so just thank you to everyone for sharing with us, and to the team at EEC who is supporting all of the great providers across the Commonwealth as well to kind of sort this out on ways that this department can help support the sector going forward. And so thank you. The board will now meet in executive session to discuss personnel-related matters. The board has determined that discussing these matters in an open session will have a detrimental effect on the body. The board will not reconvene in an open meeting following the conclusion of executive session, and instead will adjourn directly from the executive session. I will make the motion to adjourn the public meeting and enter into executive session. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second, Jamila, thank you, and I'll call the roll. George Atanasoff.
Yes.
Carolyn Kane.
Yes.
Secretary Tutwiler.
Yes.
Maria Moeller.
Yes.
Jamila Lee.
Yes.
Cheryl Travers.
Yes.
Maura Siegel.
Yes.
Linda Sager.
Yes.
Stephanie Currington. Nikki Ruiz.
Yes.
At this point, the open meeting is concluded, and I'll excuse all members of the public. Before I do that, though, just want to extend one final thank you to the community group for hosting us here at Lawrence.
You froze them in there.